Imagine for a moment that you are standing beneath a sky unlike any you have ever seen. The stars shimmer above the broad plains of Mesopotamia, their reflections trembling in the slow-moving waters of the Euphrates River. A cool night breeze drifts across fields of barley and date palms, carrying with it the distant scent of baked clay, burning cedarwood, and damp earth. The world is quiet. Yet beneath this peaceful silence, something extraordinary is about to unfold. Far away, beyond the horizon, one of history's greatest empires is dying. The mighty Assyrian Empire, once feared from Egypt to the mountains of Iran, has begun to crumble. Cities that had stood for centuries now tremble under siege. Powerful kings who believed themselves chosen by the gods can no longer stop the tide of rebellion. Few people living through these events could have imagined what would rise from the ruins. Within only a few decades, Babylon would become the richest city on earth. Its towering temples would glitter under the desert sun. Its walls would astonish travelers from every corner of the ancient world. Its armies would conquer kingdoms that had survived for generations. Its scholars would watch the stars with remarkable precision, recording the movements of planets long before telescopes existed. Its merchants would carry goods across thousands of kilometers. Its priests would perform sacred rituals beneath enormous cigarettes. Its kings would leave behind stories so unforgettable that thousands of years later, people would still speak of Babylon with awe. Tonight, we begin the journey into that remarkable world. Not the world of legends alone, but the everyday lives of the people who walked these streets. The builders who shaped millions of bricks beneath the blazing sun. The farmers who relied on the yearly flooding of the Euphrates. The scribes who carefully pressed wedge-shaped symbols into soft clay tablets. The merchants bargaining in crowded marketplaces. The soldiers guarding massive city gates. The children growing up in homes made of mud brick. The priests who believed every star carried a message from the gods. Together, we will walk beside them. We will witness the birth of an empire that transformed the ancient Near East. We will meet ambitious rulers whose decisions reshaped history. We will explore magnificent monuments that inspired myths lasting more than 2,000 years. And eventually, we will watch this glittering civilization face the same fate that has claimed every empire before it. Because no kingdom, no matter how powerful, lasts forever. Before we begin our journey, take a gentle moment to settle into a comfortable position. Allow your shoulders to relax. Let the worries of today slowly drift away, like leaves floating down a quiet river. There is nowhere else you need to be. Nothing else demanding your attention. Only the gentle rhythm of history unfolding, one peaceful story at a time. Our journey begins more than 2,600 years ago. The land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers had already witnessed thousands of years of civilization. Long before Babylon became famous, countless generations had built villages, cities, temples, canals, and kingdoms across these fertile plains. The ancient Sumerians had laid the foundations. The Akkadians had forged one of history's earliest empires. The old Babylonians, led by the famous King Hammurabi, had written laws that still fascinate historians today.
But history rarely remains still. Empires rise, empires fall, and each leaves behind lessons for those who follow. By the 7th century BCE, another great power dominated Mesopotamia, the Assyrians. Their armies were unmatched, their siege engines terrified entire kingdoms, their kings decorated palace walls with scenes of victory and conquest. For generations, no one dared challenge them. Yet power often carries the seeds of its own destruction. Years of constant warfare exhausted the empire. Heavy taxes burdened distant provinces. Local rulers grew resentful. Old enemies waited patiently for weakness. Among those watching carefully was a city that had once lived under Assyrian control, Babylon. To outsiders, it may have appeared simply another important city, but to its people, Babylon represented something far greater. It was a place of ancient traditions, a center of religion, a city deeply proud of its long history. Many Babylonians believed their time would come again, and they were right. Soon a determined leader named Nabopolassar would emerge from these lands. His decisions would ignite a rebellion unlike anything Assyria had faced before. The balance of power across the ancient world was about to change forever. But that remarkable story begins with one man and one city unwilling to remain in the shadow of an empire. As dawn slowly approaches over the quiet waters of the Euphrates, Babylon waits patiently. Its greatest chapter has not yet begun, and neither has ours.
The first light of dawn slowly spreads across the plains of Mesopotamia. Morning mist rises gently from the Euphrates, softening the outlines of canals, palm groves, and distant villages. Farmers begin leading their oxen into the fields, fishermen untie their reed boats, and smoke curls upward from clay ovens where fresh bread is already baking. To an ordinary Babylonian, it seems like another peaceful morning. Yet beyond the city's walls, history is quietly changing. For nearly 3 centuries, the Assyrian Empire had ruled these lands with unmatched military power. Their armies had crushed rebellions, conquered kingdoms, and demanded tribute from rulers across the Near East. Even hearing the name Assyria was enough to fill many people with fear. But great empires often appear strongest just before they begin to weaken. The death of powerful kings had left Assyria struggling with internal conflicts. Rival princes fought over the throne. Governors argued among themselves. Some distant provinces stopped sending taxes altogether. The empire that had once seemed invincible was beginning to crack from within. In Babylon, people watched carefully. Among them was a man whose name would soon become known across the ancient world. His name was Nabopolassar. Very little is known about his early life. Ancient records tell us almost nothing about his childhood, his family, or the path that first brought him into politics. Historians still debate exactly where he came from. But one thing is certain. He understood his moment. In 626 BCE, while Assyria struggled with unrest, Nabopolassar launched a rebellion against their rule. It was an enormous gamble. If he failed, Babylon would almost certainly face brutal punishment. Assyrian kings had never been known for mercy towards rebels. Entire cities had been destroyed as warnings to others. Every man who joined Nabopolassar knew the risk. Every family understood that defeat could mean slavery, exile, or death. Yet people continued to rally behind him. Perhaps they believed Babylon deserved independence once more. Perhaps they were simply exhausted by decades of foreign control. Or perhaps they sensed what history often teaches, that even the mightiest empire cannot survive forever.
The early months of the rebellion were uncertain. Control of Babylon changed hands more than once. Assyrian armies marched south, determined to crush the uprising before it spread. Battles were fought across dusty plains, along river crossings, and near fortified towns. Victory was never guaranteed. But Nabopolassar refused to surrender. Instead of seeking one decisive battle, he strengthened alliances, secured loyal cities, and patiently waited for opportunities. His greatest weapon was time. Every month that passed weakened Assyria a little more. Meanwhile, Babylon grew stronger. The city's workshops produced weapons, armor, and supplies. Blacksmiths worked late into the evening, shaping bronze and iron into swords, spearheads, and arrow tips. Carpenters repaired chariots. Potters made storage jars for grain and water. Even ordinary citizens contributed to the struggle. Farmers harvested crops that would feed soldiers. Boatmen transported supplies along the Euphrates. Laborers repaired defensive walls. Priests offered prayers to Marduk, Babylon's chief god, asking for divine protection and victory. Religion and politics were deeply connected. Many Babylonians believed that Marduk himself favored their cause. If Babylon succeeded, they saw it not merely as a military victory, but as proof that the gods had chosen their city once again. Whether one believed in divine guidance or careful strategy, the results soon became impossible to ignore. Nabopolassar's rebellion survived. Then it expanded. Neighboring regions began to reconsider their loyalty to Assyria. Old enemies who had feared Assyria for generations suddenly saw an opportunity. One of those enemies lived far to the east, the Medes. Together, Babylon and the Medes formed an alliance that would change history. Two powerful forces now stood against a weakening empire. The balance of power had shifted.
Across Assyria, anxious officials received troubling reports. Another city had rebelled. Another province had fallen. Another army had been defeated. The empire's borders no longer seemed secure. For ordinary people, these changes brought uncertainty. Merchants worried whether trade routes would remain safe. Families wondered if war would soon reach their homes. Travelers carried rumors from city to city, some true, others wildly exaggerated. No one knew exactly what would happen next, but everyone understood that the old order was beginning to collapse. As the sun sets over Babylon once more, its golden light reflects upon the broad waters of the Euphrates. The city feels different now, more confident, more hopeful. Its people no longer dream of freedom, they are beginning to believe it is possible. Far to the north, the Assyrian kings prepare for another campaign. They still believe they can restore their empire. They still believe Babylon can be defeated. History, however, has already begun moving in another direction, and soon the greatest city of the Assyrians will face a fate few could have imagined.
The wind carries the scent of dust across the northern plains. Far from the peaceful canals of Babylon, the mighty city of Nineveh rises beside the Tigris River. Its enormous walls stretch for kilometers, protecting magnificent palaces, crowded marketplaces, and towering temples. Travelers from distant lands often stand in amazement at its size. For generations, Nineveh had been the proud heart of the Assyrian Empire. From these grand halls, kings commanded armies that marched across deserts, crossed mountains, and conquered kingdoms. Messengers arrived daily with reports from Egypt, Anatolia, the Levant, and beyond. Treasure flowed into the city: gold, silver, ivory, cedarwood, precious stones, and exotic animals from distant lands. To many people, Nineveh seemed eternal. How could such a city ever fall? But history has a quiet way of reminding us that even the strongest walls cannot protect an empire forever. By 614 BCE, the alliance between Babylon and the Medes had grown stronger than ever. Nabopolassar understood that defeating Assyria would require patience and cooperation. Together, the two powers began pushing steadily northward, capturing Assyrian cities one after another. Each victory weakened the empire a little more. Each defeat drained its soldiers, supplies, and confidence. News traveled slowly, carried by riders on horseback or by merchants moving between cities. In villages across Mesopotamia, people gathered around travelers to hear the latest rumors. Another Assyrian fortress has fallen. The Babylonians are advancing. The Medes have crossed the mountains. No one knew which stories were true, but one thing became increasingly clear. The war was approaching Nineveh itself. Inside the great city, life continued as best it could. Scribes carefully copied official records onto clay tablets. Priests climbed temple stairways to offer sacrifices. Merchants still opened their shops each morning. Children played in narrow streets, perhaps unaware that history was closing in around them.
The city's massive walls inspired confidence. Some sections rose nearly 30 meters high, wide enough for soldiers to patrol along the top. They had protected Nineveh against countless enemies before. Many believed they would do so again. Yet outside those walls, thousands of Babylonian and Median soldiers were gathering. Their camps stretched across the countryside. Smoke from hundreds of cooking fires drifted into the evening sky. Weapons were sharpened. Siege equipment was assembled. Commanders studied the city's defenses. Every day brought fresh preparations. Then, in 612 BCE, the siege began. Ancient warfare demanded extraordinary patience. Unlike the quick battles often shown in modern films, sieges could last for weeks or even months. Attackers surrounded the city, cutting off supplies and waiting for hunger, exhaustion, and fear to weaken those inside. Meanwhile, defenders fought to hold their walls. Archers fired arrows from high towers. Soldiers rolled stones onto advancing enemies. Workers hurried to repair damaged sections before another assault could begin. Day after day, both sides endured unbearable hardship. Summer heat baked the land beneath an unforgiving sun. Water became precious. Food grew scarce. Disease threatened soldiers and civilians alike. Ancient chronicles suggest that unusually heavy rains may have played an unexpected role in the city's fate. Floodwaters from the Tigris River are believed to have damaged parts of Nineveh's defenses, weakening sections of the mighty walls. Whether this happened exactly as later accounts describe remains uncertain, but many ancient writers believed nature itself had turned against Assyria. Eventually, the attackers broke through. What followed was one of the most dramatic moments in ancient history.
The city that had ruled the Near East for centuries collapsed. Palaces burned. Government buildings fell silent. The authority of Assyria, once feared across continents, came to an end. For the people of Babylon, the victory was almost unimaginable. Generations had lived under Assyrian dominance. Now the empire that had seemed invincible had disappeared. Nabopolassar had achieved what few would have believed possible. But victory brought new responsibilities. The lands once governed by Assyria did not simply become peaceful overnight. Someone now had to rule them. Roads needed protection, cities required administration, trade had to continue. The ancient world could not remain leaderless for long. Babylon was no longer just a rebellious city. It was becoming the center of a new empire. As celebrations echoed through Babylon streets, musicians played drums and lyres, while priests offered thanks to Marduk. Families gathered to share bread, dates and beer, believing they were witnessing the beginning of a glorious new age. Yet Nabopolassar understood something many conquerors forget. Winning an empire is only the beginning. Keeping it is far more difficult. Beyond the horizon, new challenges already waited. Among them was a young prince who had fought beside his father throughout these campaigns. His name was Nebuchadnezzar. Before long, he would become one of the most famous rulers in all of ancient history. And under his reign, Babylon would reach heights that would inspire legends for thousands of years.
The smoke of war slowly fades from the northern horizon. The great struggle against Assyria has ended, and for the first time in generations, Babylon stands not as a conquered city, but as the heart of a rising empire. Along the Euphrates River, life begins to settle into a new rhythm. Farmers once again tend their irrigation canals before sunrise. Merchants guide long caravans of donkeys loaded with wool, grain, copper, and fragrant cedar wood. Fishermen cast their woven nets into the quiet river, while children chase one another through narrow streets lined with mud brick homes. Peace, though still fragile, has returned. But empires cannot rely on peace alone. They require wise rulers, strong armies, careful planning, and above all, capable successors. Among the many figures moving through the royal palace in Babylon, one young man has already begun to earn a reputation unlike any other. His name is Nebuchadnezzar, the son of King Nabopolassar. Although later generations would remember him as one of history's greatest kings, at this moment he is still a prince, learning, observing, and preparing for responsibilities that few people could imagine. Unlike many legends, Nebuchadnezzar did not simply inherit greatness overnight. He spent years accompanying military campaigns. He watched experienced generals organize supplies for thousands of soldiers. He learned how rivers, roads, and harvest seasons could determine the outcome of entire wars. He saw that an empire was held together not only by swords, but by food, engineering, diplomacy, and patience. Every lesson mattered. Within Babylon's royal court, education extended far beyond reading and writing. Princes studied ancient laws preserved on clay tablets. They learned the traditions of their ancestors. Scribes instructed them in the complex wedge-shaped script we now call cuneiform. Priests explained sacred rituals dedicated to the gods. Astronomers observed the heavens, teaching that the movements of stars and planets could reveal divine signs.
To modernize, these subjects may seem unrelated, but in ancient Babylon, they formed the foundation of kingship. A successful ruler was expected to command armies, administer justice, honor the gods, oversee construction projects, and ensure the prosperity of the people. No single task could be neglected. Meanwhile, the kingdom itself continued to expand. Former Assyrian territories now recognized Babylonian authority. Messengers traveled constantly between distant provinces. Royal officials collected taxes, settled disputes, and supervised local governors. The empire stretched further than Babylon had known for centuries. With greater territory came greater responsibility. Roads required constant maintenance. Bridges had to be repaired after seasonal floods. Canals demanded regular cleaning so water could continue reaching farms. Without these systems, even the richest empire could quickly face famine. Nebuchadnezzar paid close attention to these practical matters. He understood that cities did not flourish by chance. They flourished because thousands of ordinary people worked together every single day. Brickmakers shaped clay beneath the hot Mesopotamian sun. Carpenters cut timber into sturdy beams. Metalworkers forged tools from bronze and iron. Boatmen carried grain along the Euphrates. Every profession played its part. Even the royal palace reflected this spirit of organization. Servants moved quietly through wide courtyards. Officials carried stacks of clay tablets containing records of taxes, harvests, and trade.
Guards stood watch at heavy wooden gates decorated with carved reliefs. The palace was not merely a home, it was the administrative heart of a growing empire. Beyond its walls, Babylon itself was changing. New neighborhoods appeared, workshops became busier, foreign merchants arrived speaking unfamiliar languages. Some came from the mountains to the east, others crossed deserts from Arabia, still others traveled from the Mediterranean coast. The city's markets became a meeting place for cultures from across the ancient Near East. With prosperity came confidence. Babylonians no longer remembered themselves as subjects of a distant empire. They had become the empire. Yet one final challenge remained. Far to the southwest lay the rich lands of Syria and the kingdom of Judah. Egypt, eager to restore its own influence, had begun moving north once again. Two great powers were now on a path towards conflict.
Babylon could not ignore this threat. Neither could Prince Nebuchadnezzar. Soon he would lead Babylonian forces into one of the most decisive battles of the ancient world, a battle that would secure Babylon's dominance and open the door to an age of extraordinary wealth, magnificent architecture, and lasting fame. As evening falls over the Euphrates, the prince walks quietly along the palace terrace. Below him, thousands of oil lamps begin to glow across the city. Their gentle light reflects upon the river, creating shimmering ribbons of gold that drift silently through the darkness. Nebuchadnezzar cannot know exactly what history will one day say about him, but the path before him has already begun, and soon all of Mesopotamia will know his name.
Babylonian troops pressed against the Egyptian lines, testing for weakness. Archers targeted advancing soldiers. Infantry fought hand to hand. Chariots maneuvered across the battlefield, seeking opportunities to break enemy formations. Hour after hour, the struggle continued. Then the balance began to shift. Babylonian forces gained the advantage. The Egyptian army started to retreat. What began as an organized withdrawal soon turned into a desperate flight northward and southward, with Babylonian troops pursuing them relentlessly. The Battle of Carchemish became one of the most decisive victories in ancient history. Egypt's hopes of dominating the region were shattered. Babylon emerged as the unquestioned power of the Near East. For Nebuchadnezzar, the victory was transformative. He was no longer simply the son of Nabopolassar. He had proven himself as a military leader capable of defeating one of the ancient world's greatest kingdoms. News of the triumph traveled quickly. Messengers rode across dusty roads carrying reports back to Babylon. Merchants repeated the story in marketplaces. Priests offered thanks to Marduk for the victory. Families celebrated, believing their empire's future had been secured. Yet even in the midst of triumph, urgent news arrived. King Nabopolassar had died. Nebuchadnezzar was still far from Babylon, deep in campaign territory. The empire could not remain leaderless for long. Rival claimants or rebellious provinces might seize the opportunity if the succession appeared uncertain. Nebuchadnezzar acted immediately. Leaving much of the army behind, he hurried back toward Babylon across hundreds of kilometers of difficult terrain. The journey was exhausting, but speed was essential. When he reached the city, preparations for kingship began at once. Priests performed sacred rituals. Officials gathered in the royal palace. The people of Babylon awaited the formal coronation of their new ruler. Nebuchadnezzar, victorious general of Carchemish, was about to become king, and under his reign, Babylon would enter its most famous and magnificent age. As night falls over the Euphrates, the city glows with torchlight and anticipation. The empire has won a great battle. Now it waits for the king who will shape its destiny.
The first rays of morning sunlight spread gently across the rooftops of Babylon. From the highest terrace of the royal palace, the city awakens, one sound at a time. Potters begin turning their wheels. Bakers remove warm loaves of barley bread from clay ovens. Donkeys carrying baskets of dates slowly make their way towards the marketplace. Along the Euphrates River, boatmen untie their vessels as the calm water reflects the golden colors of dawn. Life continues much as it always has. Yet today, Babylon has a new king. Nebuchadnezzar II now wears the royal crown. The victory at Carchemish has secured his reputation, but he knows that winning battles is only one part of ruling an empire. The greater challenge lies ahead. How does a king create a city so magnificent that future generations will never forget it? Nebuchadnezzar already has an answer. He will rebuild Babylon into the greatest city on earth. Not simply the largest, not merely the richest, but the most beautiful.
Almost immediately, enormous construction projects begin across the city. Thousands of laborers gather before sunrise. Some carry baskets filled with clay. Others transport reeds, timber and stone. Brickmakers work tirelessly beside massive kilns, where mud bricks are baked until they become hard enough to support enormous buildings. Unlike many regions with abundant natural stone, southern Mesopotamia has very little rock. Babylon is built primarily from clay taken from the riverbanks. Mixed with water and straw, shaped into molds and baked in fierce heat, these bricks become the foundation of an empire. Every new wall requires thousands of them. Every temple, palace and gateway demands countless more. The work never truly stops. Nebuchadnezzar personally oversees many of these projects. Ancient inscriptions left by the king proudly describe how he repaired ancient temples, strengthened city walls, widened streets, and restored monuments that had fallen into disrepair. To him, construction is more than architecture. It is a message.
Artisans carefully molded the outlines of animals into individual bricks before firing them in enormous kilns. Afterward, workers assembled thousands upon thousands of pieces like an enormous puzzle. One mistake could disrupt the entire design. It demanded patience measured not in days but in years. Beyond the Ishtar Gate stretched another remarkable feature of the city, the Grand Processional Way. This broad avenue served as Babylon's ceremonial heart. Its stone-paved surface was far smoother than the dusty roads outside the city. High walls lined both sides, many decorated with hundreds of lions walking proudly towards the city's sacred center. On ordinary days, merchants, travelers, and local citizens walked this road. But during the most important religious festival of the year, it became something truly spectacular. Every spring, Babylon celebrated the Akitu festival, marking the beginning of a new year. For 12 days, the city transformed into one enormous celebration. Priests carried sacred statues of the gods through the processional way. Musicians filled the air with drums, harps, and flutes. Incense drifted gently above the crowds. Thousands of people gathered to watch the procession pass beneath the towering blue gate. The king himself participated in these ceremonies. In one remarkable ritual, the high priest temporarily removed the king's royal symbols. The king stood humbly before Marduk, acknowledging that even the ruler of the greatest empire remained subject to the will of the gods. Only after completing the ceremony would his authority be symbolically renewed for another year. This tradition reminded everyone of an important Babylonian belief. Power came from the gods, not from the king alone. As evening approached after the celebrations, families returned home carrying food, flowers, and small offerings.
Children excitedly retold everything they had seen. Travelers carried stories of Babylon back to their own countries. Many would spend the rest of their lives describing the astonishing blue gate that seemed to shine beneath the Mesopotamian sun. Some listeners probably believed these stories were exaggerated. Surely no city could be that magnificent. Yet Babylon truly was becoming unlike any place the ancient world had ever known. Nebuchadnezzar's dream was slowly becoming reality. Brick by brick, street by street, temple by temple. But while visitors admired the city's magnificent monuments, another story unfolded quietly behind its walls. The daily lives of ordinary Babylonians. The bakers, potters, scribes, merchants, mothers, children, and craftsmen whose work kept this great city alive every single day. Their stories were no less remarkable. And tomorrow, as the markets open once again beneath Babylon's towering walls, we will walk beside them.
The sky above Babylon is still dark. Only a faint silver glow on the eastern horizon hints that morning is approaching. The stars, so carefully studied by Babylonian astronomers, slowly begin to disappear one by one. Before the city becomes noisy, before merchants call out their prices and craftsmen begin their work, Babylon enjoys a few precious moments of quiet. Then
almost all at once, the city awakens. From hundreds of homes comes the sound of wooden doors opening. Clay ovens are lit with bundles of dry reeds. The comforting smell of fresh barley bread drifts into the cool morning air. Roosters crow from nearby courtyards. Dogs wander through narrow streets searching for scraps left from the night before. For most Babylonians, the day begins long before sunrise. Life in one of the world's greatest cities is busy. Every member of the household has responsibilities. In a modest mud brick home, a mother kneels beside a heavy stone grinding mill. Slowly she crushes barley into fine flour, preparing enough to bake bread for the family. Nearby, her children fetch water from a neighborhood well. The youngest carefully balances a small clay jar with both hands, determined not to spill a single drop. Water is precious. Without it, no meal can be prepared, no crops can grow, no city can survive. Meanwhile, the father gathers his tools. Perhaps he is a carpenter, perhaps a potter, perhaps a brickmaker helping construct another section of the city's expanding walls. Whatever his trade, his work begins early, before the Mesopotamian sun becomes unbearably hot. Across Babylon, thousands of workers stream into the streets. Some carry baskets woven from reeds, others lead donkeys loaded with sacks of grain. Boatmen push wooden barges along the Euphrates, delivering goods to markets and workshops throughout the city.
Night slowly gives way to another peaceful morning. A soft mist rises from the Euphrates as the first rays of sunlight touch Babylon's temples and rooftops. The city awakens once again, but before merchants open their stalls and laborers begin their work, another group has already started their day. The scribes. In ancient Babylon, few professions were more respected. A skilled scribe was far more than someone who could read and write. He was a record keeper, a mathematician, a government official, sometimes even a diplomat, a historian, or an advisor to the king. In a world where most people could not write, scribes held one of society's greatest treasures: knowledge. Their training began early. Young boys, usually from families with enough wealth to afford an education, attended special schools known today as edubar, or tablet houses. Here, the lessons were demanding. There were no printed books, no paper, no ink. Instead, each student sat with a lump of soft clay placed before them. In one hand, they held a simple reed stylus. With careful pressure, they pressed tiny wedge-shaped marks into the clay. This writing system is called cuneiform. At first glance, it appears incredibly complicated. Thousands of different signs had developed over many centuries. Some represented sounds, others stood for complete words. Students spent years memorizing them. Mistakes were common. A careless mark could completely change the meaning of a sentence. Teachers expected discipline. If a lesson was poorly written, the clay could simply be smoothed over while still wet, allowing the student to begin again. Ancient school tablets discovered by archaeologists even preserve humorous complaints from students. Some wrote about strict teachers, others admitted they struggled to remember difficult symbols.
Even 26 centuries ago, students worried about homework. Once fully trained, a scribe's responsibilities were endless. Inside the royal palace, scribes carefully recorded taxes collected from every province. They listed shipments of grain arriving by river, they counted livestock, they documented royal decrees. Every important decision of the kingdom passed through their hands. In the busy marketplaces, scribes prepared business contracts. A merchant selling wool to another trader would often ask a scribe to write the agreement. Both parties then pressed their personal cylinder seals into the wet clay. These beautiful carved seals acted much like modern signatures. Each one was unique. Some showed lions, others displayed gods, kings, or scenes from mythology. Rolling the seal across wet clay created an intricate design that identified its owner. No two impressions were exactly alike. Marriage agreements were also written by scribes, so were land purchases, loans, inheritance records, even simple receipts. Because clay tablets were baked or dried in the sun, many survived long after the buildings around them had disappeared. While wooden furniture rotted away, while cloth turned to dust, while even mighty palaces crumbled, the humble clay tablet endured. Today, archaeologists have discovered hundreds of thousands of these tablets across Mesopotamia. Through them, we can still read shopping lists, legal arguments, royal letters, school exercises, astronomical observations, and private family records. It is one of history's greatest gifts. The ordinary voices of ancient Babylon have never completely fallen silent. Some scribes worked in temples rather than palaces. Here they recorded offerings made to the gods. They carefully listed every sack of barley, every sheep, every jar of oil brought by worshippers. Nothing was left to memory alone. Everything important was written down. Accuracy mattered. A kingdom could not function without reliable records. Babylon's growing empire depended upon these quiet workers just as much as it depended upon soldiers or kings. Without scribes, taxes would disappear, trade would become chaotic, justice would become uncertain, knowledge itself might slowly fade away. As afternoon sunlight pours through the open courtyards of the tablet house, young students continue practicing, again and again and again, patiently pressing one tiny wedge after another. Few of them realize that their work will survive for thousands of years, that one day people living on the other side of the world will study the very marks they leave behind. As evening arrives, the scribes carefully place finished tablets onto wooden shelves where they will dry. Some contain royal orders, some record grain harvests, others preserve ancient stories passed down through generations. Among those stories are tales of heroes, great floods, and powerful things, stories that will one day inspire civilizations far beyond Babylon. But while scribes preserve the words of the kingdom, another group quietly studies something even older than writing itself. Every clear night they climb the highest temples and watch the heavens, for the Babylonians believe that the stars themselves are writing a message across the sky, and soon we will join them beneath those endless constellations.
The city of Babylon has finally grown quiet. The bustling marketplaces have emptied, the blacksmiths have allowed their fires to cool. Families have finished their evening meals, and oil lamps flicker gently inside thousands of mud brick homes. Above the city, the sky slowly darkens. One by one, the stars begin to appear. To many people, they are simply beautiful lights scattered across the heavens. But to the Babylonians, they are something far greater. They are messages. From the highest temple towers, a small group of priests and scholars quietly climbs narrow staircases leading toward the rooftops. Each step takes them farther above the sleeping city. Far below, the Euphrates glimmers beneath the moonlight like a ribbon of silver. The sounds of everyday life fade into silence. Only the gentle breeze and the distant cry of a nightbird remain. These men are not here to pray alone. They are here to observe, night after night, year after year, generation after generation. The Babylonians believed that the gods revealed their intentions through the heavens. Every bright planet, every eclipse, every unusual movement of the moon carried meaning. If the skies changed unexpectedly, kings wanted to know why. So the observers watched with extraordinary patience, without telescopes, without cameras, without clocks, only with sharp eyes, remarkable discipline, and carefully prepared clay tablets. Each evening they noted where the moon appeared. They tracked the wandering planets that we now know as Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. Unlike the fixed stars, these heavenly bodies slowly moved across the sky over weeks and months. Their motion fascinated Babylonian scholars. Every observation was carefully recorded. A cloud passing over the moon, the first appearance of Venus before sunrise, the disappearance of Jupiter below the western horizon. Nothing seemed too small to write down. At first, these records served religious purposes. The priests hoped to understand the wishes of Marduk and the other gods. But something remarkable happened.
As the years passed, careful observation began to reveal patterns. The heavens followed rhythms. The moon returned to familiar positions. The planets repeated their journeys. Certain eclipses could even be anticipated. Without realizing it, Babylonian astronomers were laying the foundations of scientific astronomy. Their work would later influence scholars in Greece, Persia, and many other civilizations. Even today, historians continue to admire the precision of their observations. Imagine standing beside one of these ancient astronomers. The air is cool. The city below is almost completely silent. The only light comes from the stars above and a small oil lamp placed beside a clay tablet. A scribe presses tiny wedge-shaped marks into the soft clay as another observer quietly points towards the eastern sky. There is no hurry. The heavens move at their own pace. Patience is the most important tool they possess. Occasionally, an unexpected event captures everyone's attention. A lunar eclipse. Slowly, the bright full moon begins to darken. Its familiar white glow fades into deep shades of red and copper. For modern observers, it is a predictable astronomical event. For many Babylonians, however, it could be an ominous sign. The king might order special prayers. Priests could perform rituals asking the gods for protection. In some cases, ancient records suggest that temporary substitute kings were even appointed during dangerous omens, believing that any misfortune predicted by the heavens would fall upon the substitute rather than the true ruler. These beliefs may seem unusual today, yet they remind us how deeply religion, politics, and astronomy were connected in Babylonian life. The sky was never simply the sky, it was part of the kingdom itself. Meanwhile, ordinary families also looked upward each evening. Parents pointed out familiar constellations to their children. Travelers used the stars to guide long journeys across deserts and rivers. Farmers watched the seasons change, knowing the heavens often signaled the right time to plant or harvest. The stars belonged to everyone. As midnight approaches, the observers finish another night's work. Fresh clay tablets are placed carefully alongside hundreds of earlier records. Together, they form one of the longest continuous astronomical archives in human history. Long after Babylon's mighty walls have fallen, long after its kings have passed into history, these quiet observations will continue speaking across thousands of years. They remind us that some of humanity's greatest discoveries begin not with powerful machines, but with curiosity, and with someone willing to spend countless peaceful nights simply watching the sky. As dawn begins to brighten the eastern horizon once more, the astronomers descend from the temple. A new day is beginning, and somewhere beyond Babylon's magnificent walls, another challenge is already growing. The empire is prosperous, its cities are thriving, its scholars are expanding human knowledge, but its armies will soon march again. For Babylon's greatest king has not yet finished shaping history.
The first light of dawn spreads gently across the rooftops of Babylon. The city is peaceful. From the palace gardens comes the quiet sound of flowing water. Merchants prepare their stalls as they do every morning. Bakers slide fresh barley bread from warm clay ovens, and fishermen guide their boats onto the calm waters of the Euphrates. To the people of Babylon, prosperity has become part of everyday life. The empire is growing stronger with each passing year. Trade flourishes, construction continues. The gods, many believe, have blessed their kingdom. Yet beyond Babylon's towering walls, the world remains uncertain. Far to the west lies the narrow strip of land connecting Mesopotamia with the Mediterranean Sea. This region is more than a collection of small kingdoms, it is the crossroads of the ancient world. Every caravan carrying cedar from Lebanon, every shipment of wine from the hills, every army marching between Egypt and Mesopotamia must pass through these lands. Whoever controls this corridor controls one of the most valuable trade routes on earth. Nebuchadnezzar understands this better than anyone. After his great victory at Carchemish, many smaller kingdoms accepted Babylonian authority. Among them was the kingdom of Judah, with its capital at Jerusalem. At first, Judah became a loyal vassal state. Its king continued to rule, but he was expected to pay tribute to Babylon. Each year, caravans carried silver, grain, olive oil, fine textiles, and other valuable goods eastward to Babylon. This arrangement allowed Judah to keep a measure of independence while recognizing Babylon's greater power. For a time, the system worked. Merchants traveled safely, markets remained busy, the roads stayed open. But politics in the ancient Near East rarely remained stable for long. Far to the southwest, Egypt had not abandoned its ambitions. Although defeated at Carchemish, Egyptian rulers continued seeking opportunities to weaken Babylon's influence. Whispers of rebellion began spreading among some Western kingdoms if Egypt offered support.
Perhaps Babylon could be challenged. Perhaps independence could be restored. In Jerusalem, these questions divided leaders. Some argued that loyalty to Babylon guaranteed peace. Others believed Egypt would eventually come to their aid. The decision would shape history. Eventually, the rulers of Judah chose to rebel. To Nebuchadnezzar, this was not merely an act of defiance, it threatened the stability of the entire empire. If one province rebelled successfully, others might soon follow. Trade routes could collapse, taxes would disappear. Neighboring governors might question Babylon's authority. The king believed he had little choice. Once again, the Babylonian army prepared to march west. The journey itself was enormous. Thousands of soldiers crossed rivers, deserts, and fertile valleys. Supply wagons carried food, weapons, tents, and equipment. Engineers accompanied the army, ready to construct bridges or siege works whenever necessary. Ancient warfare demanded careful planning. An army could not simply live off the land for long. Every loaf of bread, every water skiln, every arrow had to be accounted for.
As Babylonian forces approached Jerusalem, tension filled the countryside. Farmers hurried to harvest what crops they could. Families gathered supplies. Messengers wrote desperately between cities carrying urgent news. Inside Jerusalem's walls, preparations for defense began. The gates were strengthened, food was stored. Soldiers took their positions along the city's fortifications. No one knew how long a siege might last. Nebuchadnezzar did not rush into battle. Like many experienced commanders, he understood that patience often achieved what violence could not. Rather than launching reckless assaults, Babylonian forces surrounded the city. Roads were blocked, supplies were cut off. The siege had begun. For those trapped inside Jerusalem, daily life changed completely. Food became increasingly scarce. Every loaf of bread became precious. Every jar of water was carefully guarded. Families waited anxiously for news that never came. Would Egypt arrive? Would the siege end? Would help come before hunger grew unbearable? Outside the walls, Babylonian soldiers also waited. They repaired camps, maintained weapons, watched the gates day and night. Ancient sieges often became contests of endurance rather than constant fighting. Weeks stretched into months. Patience became as powerful as any sword. As evening falls over the hills surrounding Jerusalem, campfires glow across the Babylonian encampment. Far in the distance, the stars begin appearing above the silent city. The same stars shine over Babylon, hundreds of kilometers away. 2 cities, 2 peoples, 2 very different futures. Soon, Jerusalem will become one of the most remembered cities in Babylonian history, and the decisions made here will echo through religions, cultures, and civilizations for thousands of years to come.
The sun rises slowly over the hills of Judah. Its gentle light touches the stone walls of Jerusalem, but there is little comfort in the new day. The city has been surrounded for many months. From the watchtowers, weary guards scan the horizon, hoping to see an army coming to rescue them, but the roads remain empty. Beyond the walls, the Babylonian camps are quiet and disciplined. Thin columns of smoke rise from hundreds of cooking fires. Soldiers sharpen their weapons. Engineers inspect the siege works. Archers stand watch, their eyes fixed on the gates. They are in no hurry. King Nebuchadnezzar understands that time is fighting on his side. Inside Jerusalem, however, every passing day brings new hardship. The city's food stores grow smaller. Barley, wheat, dried figs, and olive oil, once plentiful, are now carefully rationed. Families divide their meals into smaller portions. Parents quietly give more food to their children while pretending they are not hungry themselves. Water, too, becomes precious. Every clay jar is guarded with care. The bustling marketplaces that once echoed with merchants and travelers have fallen silent. Workshops stand empty. The cheerful sounds of daily life have been replaced by anxious whispers. No one knows how much longer the city can endure. Ancient sieges were often battles of patience rather than constant combat. The greatest enemy was not always the sword. It was hunger, exhaustion, and the slow fading of hope. At last, after many difficult months, Jerusalem can no longer resist. The Babylonian forces break through the city's defenses. For the people inside, it is a day of fear and uncertainty. For the Babylonians, it is the end of a long campaign. Nebuchadnezzar orders the city brought under Babylonian control. Important buildings, including the Great Temple, suffer devastating destruction. The royal palace is damaged. Sections of the city's walls are torn down. The symbols of the old kingdom disappear before the eyes of those who had known them all their lives. Many of Jerusalem's leading citizens are taken into exile. Among them are skilled craftsmen, metalworkers, scribes, priests, officials,
and members of noble families. This was not unusual in the ancient world. Babylonian kings often relocated talented people from conquered lands. By bringing skilled workers into the empire, they strengthened Babylon while reducing the chance of future rebellions. For the exiles, however, the journey is heartbreaking. They leave behind homes they may never see again. Ancient olive trees, family graves, familiar streets, everything they have ever known slowly disappears behind them. The road to Babylon stretches for hundreds of kilometers, across valleys, along rivers, through dusty plains. The journey takes many weeks. Some travelers walk in silence, Others quietly sing songs remembering their homeland. Parents comfort frightened children. No one can know what awaits them in the great city to the east. Meanwhile, life in Babylon continues almost unchanged. Merchants still bargain in crowded markets. Brickmakers continue shaping clay for new construction. Priests offer prayers in the temples of Marduk. Most citizens are aware that another victory has been won, but few truly understand the personal sorrow carried by those arriving from distant lands. When the exiles finally reach Babylon, they discover something unexpected. The city is unlike anything they have ever imagined. Towering walls rise above the plain. The brilliant blue Ishtar Gate shines beneath the sun. Wide ceremonial roads stretch toward enormous temples. Boats crowd the Euphrates River. Languages from many different cultures fill the marketplaces. Babylon is not merely a capital, it is one of the largest and wealthiest cities on earth. Although they are far from home, many exiles gradually build new lives. Some become successful merchants, others continue their crafts, some serve within the Babylonian administration. Over time, communities form, preserving their traditions while adapting to life inside the empire. For historians, this moment becomes one of the most significant events in ancient history. The Babylonian exile would shape religious beliefs, sacred writings, and cultural traditions for centuries to come. Its influence would reach far beyond the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, far beyond Babylon itself. As evening settles over the Euphrates, the great city glows beneath thousands of oil lamps. From the palace balcony, Nebuchadnezzar looks upon an empire that now stretches far beyond any Babylonian ruler had dreamed possible. He has conquered mighty kingdoms, expanded his borders, secured vital trade routes. Yet his greatest ambition is not only to rule the ancient world, he wants Babylon itself to become its greatest wonder. And nowhere will that dream be more visible than in a garden so extraordinary that future generations will debate whether it ever truly existed, the legendary Hanging Gardens of Babylon. Their story begins next.
The sun rises over Babylon in a soft gold and pale blue. Morning light washes across the city's massive walls, glitters on the slow-moving Euphrates, and reflects from the brilliant blue bricks of the Ishtar Gate. From a distance, Babylon already appears unlike any other city. But among all its wonders, there is one place that has captured human imagination for more than 2,000 years. A place so famous, and yet so mysterious, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. Did they truly exist, or were they simply a beautiful legend passed from one generation to the next? Even today, historians continue to search for the answer. Let us imagine for a moment that we are travelers arriving in Babylon during the reign of King Nebuchadnezzar II. We have crossed hot deserts, winding rivers, and fertile plains. Now, standing within the city walls, we hear whispers from merchants and guides. They say the king built a mountain of trees. They say flowers bloom high above the rooftops. They say water flows uphill. At first, such stories seem impossible. Mesopotamia is famous for its wide, flat landscape. Natural mountains are hundreds of kilometers away. How could a mountain garden exist here? Yet the stories refuse to disappear. According to ancient Greek writers, Nebuchadnezzar built the gardens for his queen, often identified as Ametes. She was said to have come from the green mountains of Media. Although she admired Babylon's wealth and power, she missed the forests, cool hills, and flowing streams of her homeland. The king, wishing to ease her homesickness, supposedly ordered the construction of an extraordinary garden unlike anything the world had ever seen. Whether this story is entirely true remains uncertain. Ancient Babylonian records never clearly describe such a garden. No inscription from Nebuchadnezzar himself proudly claims its construction. For historians, this puzzling is puzzling. Nebuchadnezzar carefully recorded many of his great building projects. Why not this one? Perhaps the gardens truly existed but were never mentioned. Perhaps later writers confused Babylon with another city. Or perhaps the legend grew larger with every generation that retold it. Whatever the truth may be, the descriptions are breathtaking.
Imagine terraces rising one above another like a giant staircase, each level covered with rich soil brought from distant lands. Towering date palms sway gently in the breeze. Fig trees spread their branches wide. Cypress trees reach toward the sky. Colorful flowers bloom in every direction. Vines spill gracefully over stone walls. Birds sing among leaves that seem almost impossible in the dry Mesopotamian climate. Most astonishing of all is the water. To keep such gardens alive beneath the hot Babylonian sun would require an extraordinary engineering achievement. Some ancient writers believed hidden machines lifted water from the Euphrates River to the highest terraces. Perhaps large wheels turned continuously. Perhaps chains of buckets carried water upward. No one knows for certain, but Babylonian engineers were masters of canals, reservoirs, and irrigation. If any civilization could attempt such a project, it was theirs. As we walk through this imagined garden, the sounds of the busy city gradually fade. Instead of blacksmiths' hammers and crowded markets, we hear gentle birdsong. Instead of dusty streets, cool shadows fall beneath leafy branches. The scent of roses and flowering shrubs fills the air. From the highest terrace, the view is extraordinary. The Euphrates winds peacefully through the city. The great ziggurat rises proudly in the distance. The Ishtar Gate gleams like polished sapphire beneath the afternoon sun. Thousands of people move through the streets below, appearing no larger than tiny figures from this peaceful height. Whether real or legendary, the Hanging Gardens came to symbolize something important about Babylon: its ambition, its wealth, its confidence. Nebuchadnezzar did not simply wish to build a successful capital. He wanted to create a city that people would remember forever. In that goal, he unquestionably succeeded. More than 25 centuries later, the name Babylon still evokes images of magnificent walls, towering temples, and gardens that seem to belong more to dreams than history. As evening approaches, golden sunlight filters gently through the leaves. The city below grows quieter. The gardens, whether standing in reality or living only in memory, remind us that history is not built solely from facts and stones. It is also shaped by stories. Some stories can be proven, others remain mysteries. Both continue to inspire wonder. Yet beyond these beautiful gardens stands the greatest structure in Babylon, a temple tower so enormous that many later believed it had reached toward heaven itself, the mighty ziggurat known as Etemenanki. Its story awaits us with the coming dawn.
The first light of dawn gently touches the rooftops of Babylon. A cool breeze drifts across the Euphrates, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and burning cedar wood. The city is slowly awakening, but long before the markets begin to fill, another place is already alive with quiet purpose. At the very heart of Babylon rises a structure so immense that visitors often stop walking the moment they see it. It towers above the surrounding buildings. Its broad base dominates the skyline. From miles away, travelers can already make out its massive silhouette against the brightening sky. This is Etemenanki. Its ancient Sumerian name is often translated as the House of the Foundation of Heaven and Earth. To the people of Babylon, it is far more than a building. It is a bridge between the human world and the divine. Today, we often call such a structure a ziggurat. Unlike the smooth pyramids of Egypt, a ziggurat is built in a series of enormous stepped terraces. Each level rises above the one below it, creating a giant staircase that seems to climb toward the heavens. Constructing such a monument is an extraordinary challenge. Thousands of workers spend years making millions of mud bricks. Each brick is carefully shaped, dried in the sun or baked in kilns, and carried into place by teams of laborers. Bitumen, a naturally occurring form of asphalt found in Mesopotamia, is used as mortar to help bind the bricks together and protect the structure from moisture. Every layer must support the tremendous weight above it. It is engineering on a monumental scale. Nebuchadnezzar II devotes enormous resources to restoring and enlarging the ziggurat. Ancient inscriptions proudly describe his efforts to rebuild sacred monuments that had fallen into disrepair. To him, restoring Etemenanki is not merely an act of construction, it is an act of devotion. Each completed brick honors Marduk, the chief god of Babylon. As the sun climbs higher, priests begin their daily rituals. Dressed in finely woven robes, they ascend the broad stairways leading toward the upper terraces. The climb is slow. Step by step, they leave behind the noise of the city. Below them, merchants bargain in the markets. Children run through narrow streets. Boatmen guide vessels along the Euphrates. But higher on the ziggurat, a profound silence begins to settle. At the summit stands a sacred shrine dedicated to Marduk. Only priests and certain royal officials are permitted to enter. Offerings of bread, fruit, incense, wine, and carefully prepared animals are presented according to traditions passed down through countless generations. Smoke rises gently into the morning sky. Prayers are spoken in ancient words that many ordinary citizens never hear.
The Babylonians believed these ceremonies help maintain harmony between heaven and earth. If the gods are honored properly, the rivers will continue to flood at the right time. Harvests will be abundant, trade will prosper, the empire will remain secure. Religion is woven into every part of daily life. For Babylon's people, there is little separation between the sacred and the ordinary. A farmer planting barley, a merchant weighing silver, a king issuing a decree, all believe they are living within an order established by the gods. Standing atop Etemenanki offers an unforgettable view. The entire city stretches in every direction. The blue Ishtar Gate gleams in the distance. The processional way cuts a straight line through the heart of Babylon. Palm trees sway gently beside the Euphrates. Smoke rises from thousands of homes where evening meals will soon be prepared. Beyond the city walls lies the vast Mesopotamian plain, reaching towards the horizon in every direction. It is easy to understand why visitors believed Babylon was the center of the world. Centuries later, stories about this enormous tower spread far beyond Mesopotamia. Some scholars believe Etemenanki may have inspired the biblical story of the Tower of Babel, in which humanity attempts to build a tower reaching towards heaven. While historians continue to debate the connection, there is little doubt that Babylon's great ziggurat left a lasting impression on those who encountered it. Its image survived long after the structure itself had fallen into ruin. As afternoon fades into evening, the final prayers of the day are offered. Priests slowly descend the long stairways. The city below begins to glow with thousands of oil lamps. High above them all, the summit of Etemenanki catches the last golden light of the setting sun. For a brief moment, it seems almost to touch the heavens. Yet even as Babylon reaches the height of its glory, time continues its quiet march. Nebuchadnezzar has transformed the city into one of the greatest capitals the ancient world has ever known. But no king rules forever. Soon age will overtake the mighty builder of Babylon, and with his passing, the empire he created will begin a slow and uncertain journey towards its final chapter.
The years pass quietly over Babylon. Seasons come and go along the banks of the Euphrates. Each spring the river swells with fresh water. Each summer the sun bakes the clay streets until they shimmer in the heat. Each autumn caravans arrive carrying treasures from distant lands, and each winter gentle rains wash the dust from the city's towering walls. For the people of Babylon, life seems wonderfully stable. The empire is prosperous, its markets are full, its temples are busy, its walls stand stronger than ever. King Nebuchadnezzar II has ruled for more than 4 decades. Few Babylonian kings have enjoyed such a long and successful reign. His victories in war are now spoken of almost as distant memories. Instead, people remember him as the great builder, the king who transformed Babylon into the envy of the ancient world. Visitors continue arriving from every direction. Some come from the mountains of Anatolia, others sail from ports along the Mediterranean Sea, still others travel across deserts from Arabia. Many have heard incredible stories about Babylon. Some expect disappointment. Instead, they leave even more astonished than before. They speak of walls so vast that they seem endless, of temples reaching towards the heavens, of brilliant blue gates unlike anything they have ever seen, of broad avenues where royal processions pass beneath banners fluttering in the warm breeze. The city's reputation spreads farther with every passing year. Inside the royal palace, however, time is impossible to ignore. Nebuchadnezzar is no longer the energetic young prince who defeated Egypt at Carchemish. His beard has turned grey, his steps have become slower.
The great city of Babylon still shines beneath the Mesopotamian sun. Its walls remain as impressive as ever. The Ishtar Gate continues to welcome merchants from distant kingdoms. Boats crowd the Euphrates, carrying grain, timber, wool, and precious goods from every corner of the empire. To an ordinary traveler, nothing seems wrong. Babylon still appears eternal. Yet history often changes long before anyone notices. The strongest empires rarely collapse in a single day. Instead, small changes quietly gather like distant clouds before a storm. After the death of Nebuchadnezzar II, Babylon enters a period of uncertainty. Several kings rule in quick succession. Some remain on the throne for only a few years. Others struggle to maintain the authority that Nebuchadnezzar had built over decades. Inside the royal palace, experienced officials continue their work. Scribes still record taxes on clay tablets. Governors still send reports from distant provinces. Priests continue their daily rituals in the temples of Marduk. Life goes on, but stability is becoming more fragile. Eventually, a man named Nabonidus becomes king. Unlike Nebuchadnezzar, Nabonidus is remembered less as a conqueror and more as a deeply religious ruler. He develops a particular devotion to the moon god Sin, whose great temple stands far to the south in the ancient city of Haran. This unusual religious focus creates tension within Babylon. For generations, Marduk has been regarded as the supreme protector of the city. Many priests worry that the king is neglecting Babylon's most sacred traditions. Their concerns quietly spread through the temples. At the same time, another decision surprises the kingdom. For reasons historians still debate, Nabonidus spends many years away from Babylon itself, living in the Arabian oasis city of Tama. During his long absence, his son Belshazzar governs the capital as regent. The city continues to function. Markets remain busy, trade flourishes, but some people begin asking uncomfortable questions. Why is the king so far from his own capital? Can an empire remain united when its ruler is absent for so long? While Babylon looks inward, events beyond its borders begin moving rapidly. Far to the east, among the rugged mountains and broad plateaus of Persia, a remarkable leader is gathering strength.
His name is Cyrus. History will later remember him as Cyrus the Great. At first, he rules only a relatively modest kingdom. But Cyrus possesses qualities that make him different from many conquerors. He is patient. He forms alliances instead of relying only on force. He rewards loyalty, and when possible, he wins support from conquered peoples rather than ruling through fear alone. One by one, neighboring kingdoms come under his control. The Medes, once Babylon's powerful allies against Assyria, are united with Persia under Cyrus's leadership. Soon afterward, the wealthy kingdom of Lydia also falls. Its famous king, Croesus, can no longer stop the Persian advance. With every victory, Cyrus gains more soldiers, more wealth, and more experience. His empire expands rapidly. News of these events slowly reaches Babylon. Merchants arriving from the east speak of Persian victories. Travelers tell stories of Cyrus's wisdom and discipline. Some dismiss these reports. After all, Babylon's walls are enormous. Its army is experienced. Its treasury is full. Surely no foreign ruler could threaten the greatest city in the world. Others are less certain. Experienced officials understand that no empire remains unchallenged forever. History has already taught Babylon this lesson once. They themselves had replaced mighty Assyria. Now another rising power stands on the horizon. As evening settles over Babylon, the city remains calm. Families gather for their evening meals. Children play beneath the fading light. Priests offer their final prayers before the temple doors are closed for the night. High above them, the stars begin appearing exactly as they have for countless generations. The astronomers continue recording their careful observations. The city sleeps peacefully, unaware that beyond the eastern frontier, Cyrus's armies are steadily moving closer. The final chapter of the Neo-Babylonian Empire has begun. But remarkably, the greatest battle for Babylon may not be fought upon its mighty walls at all. It may be decided by strategy, patience, and the quiet flow of the Euphrates River itself.
The evening air over Babylon is warm and still. As the sun slowly disappears beyond the western horizon, thousands of oil lamps begin to glow throughout the city. Their golden light reflects upon the calm waters of the Euphrates, turning the river into a ribbon of shimmering fire. Inside the great walls, life feels almost unchanged. Merchants close their shops after another successful day. Children race through quiet courtyards before being called home for supper. The smell of roasted lamb, fresh bread, onions, dates and herbs drifts through the narrow streets. Musicians play soft melodies in private homes. Priests complete the final prayers of the evening. To the people of Babylon, it is simply another peaceful night. Few realize that history is about to change forever. Far beyond the city walls, the army of Cyrus the Great waits patiently in the darkness.
Unlike many conquerors before him, Cyrus has no desire to destroy Babylon's magnificent buildings. He knows that a ruined city has little value. What he wants is something far greater. He wants Babylon itself, its wealth, its people, its knowledge, its position at the center of the ancient world. Rather than launching a costly assault against walls that seem almost impossible to breach, Cyrus chooses another path, one that relies not only on military strength, but on careful planning. The Euphrates River flows directly through the heart of Babylon. For centuries it has been the city's greatest blessing. It provides drinking water, it irrigates fields, it carries boats loaded with grain and trade goods. It is the lifeblood of the empire. But tonight it may also become its greatest weakness. Ancient Greek historians, particularly Herodotus, later described how the Persians diverted part of the Euphrates into canals that had been prepared beforehand. As the river level dropped, soldiers were able to move through sections of the riverbed beneath the city's defenses. Other ancient accounts describe the capture somewhat differently, and modern historians continue to debate exactly how the city was taken. What is widely accepted is that Babylon fell with surprisingly little large-scale destruction. As darkness deepens, Persian soldiers move quietly. There are no roaring battle cries, no thunder of siege engines.
Only the soft splash of water beneath careful footsteps. The city's enormous walls remain standing. Many of the guards never imagine that danger is approaching from below. Inside Babylon, a festival may be taking place. Some ancient traditions suggest that music, feasting, and celebration filled parts of the city that night. Whether every detail of those later stories is true is impossible to know. But one fact remains remarkably consistent across historical sources. Babylon did not experience the kind of devastating final battle that many expected. Instead, the city changed hands with astonishing speed. As Persian troops entered Babylon, many districts offered little resistance. Officials quickly realized that organized defense had become impossible. The empire that had ruled Mesopotamia for nearly 90 years had reached its end. For ordinary citizens, dawn arrived much as it always had. The first rays of sunlight touched the rooftops. Boatmen walked toward the river. Bakers lit their ovens. Merchants prepared to open their stalls. Yet something was different. The banners flying above the city had changed. A new ruler now governed Babylon. For many people, daily life continued with surprising normality. Markets reopened, temples remained active, homes were untouched. The Great Walls still stood proudly around the city. Cyrus understood that preserving Babylon's prosperity was wiser than destroying it. Later inscriptions, including the famous Cyrus cylinder, present him as a ruler who respected local traditions and restored temples in various cities under his control. While these inscriptions also served as royal propaganda, they reflect a policy that contrasted with the image of indiscriminate destruction often associated with conquest. The people of Babylon had awakened in the same homes, walked the same streets, crossed the same bridges, yet they now belonged to a different empire. The Neo-Babylonian Empire was over, the Persian Empire had begun. As evening falls once again over the Euphrates, the city remains breathtakingly beautiful. The Ishtar Gate still gleams beneath the fading sunlight. Etemenanki still rises above the skyline. The processional way remains filled with travelers from distant lands. Babylon has fallen, but Babylon itself endures. Its greatest buildings still inspire awe. Its scholars continue their work. Its merchants continue trading. Its story is far from finished. For although the empire has disappeared, the legacy of Babylon is only beginning.
Morning returns to Babylon, just as it has for thousands of years. The first sunlight spills across the Euphrates, painting the river in shades of gold. Gentle ripples carry small wooden boats toward the busy docks, while birds circle above the towering city walls. At first glance, nothing appears to have changed. The Ishtar Gate still stands proudly at the city's northern entrance. The broad processional way remains filled with merchants, travelers, and pilgrims. Smoke rises from clay ovens as bakers prepare fresh barley bread. Children laugh in narrow streets on their way to lessons. The city seems almost untouched. Yet beneath this familiar rhythm, Babylon has entered a new chapter. The banners flying above the royal palace no longer belong to Babylonian kings. They now represent the growing empire of Cyrus the Great. For many ancient cities, conquest meant destruction. Walls were torn down, temples were burned, entire populations were scattered. Babylon experiences something different. Cyrus understands the value of preserving one of the world's greatest cities.
Rather than treating Babylon as an enemy to be punished, he chooses to make it one of the most important cities within his expanding empire. Royal officials continue their work. The same scribes sit before clay tablets, recording taxes and trade agreements. Experienced administrators remain in their positions. Many local customs continue exactly as before. For ordinary citizens, daily life changes less than they might have feared. The markets remain crowded, grain still arrives from surrounding farms, caravans continue traveling east toward Persia and west toward the Mediterranean. Babylon remains one of the ancient world's greatest centers of commerce. Its location makes it impossible to ignore. Roads leading in every direction meet here. River traffic continues day and night. Merchants speaking dozens of different languages gather beneath shaded market stalls. Some wear Persian robes, others come from Egypt, some arrive from the mountains of Anatolia, still others travel from distant Central Asia. The city becomes even more international than before. Persian officials bring new ideas while respecting many existing traditions. This balance helps maintain stability across an empire stretching farther than almost any before it. One of Cyrus's most remembered decisions concerns the peoples who had been taken into exile by earlier Babylonian kings. Historical records indicate that he allowed several displaced communities, including many Judeans, to return to their homelands if they wished and to rebuild important religious sites. Not everyone chose to leave, however.
Many families had now lived in Babylon for decades. Children had been born there, businesses had been established, friendships crossed cultural boundaries. For some, Babylon had become home. As the years pass, Persian rule continues under Cyrus's successors. The empire grows even larger. Royal roads connect distant provinces. Messengers ride remarkable distances carrying official orders with impressive speed. Trade expands across 3 continents. Babylon remains one of the empire's brightest jewels. Yet time continues its quiet work. The magnificent buildings constructed by Nebuchadnezzar require constant repair. Sun-dried mud bricks, though remarkably practical, cannot last forever without careful maintenance. Every rainy season weakens walls a little. Every flood tests the city's foundations. Thousands of workers continue repairing canals, temples, and public buildings. Without their labor, even the greatest city would slowly crumble. The priests of Marduk continue their ceremonies. Astronomers still climb the temple towers each night to observe the stars. Students continue practicing cuneiform in the tablet houses. Life flows onward with surprising continuity. Empires may change, kings may come and go, but ordinary people continue baking bread, teaching children, selling cloth, repairing boats, living one quiet day after another. As the evening breeze cools the city, the Euphrates reflects countless stars once more. The same stars that Babylonian astronomers have studied for generations. The same stars that watched the rise of Sumer, the glory of Assyria, the triumph of Babylon, and now the rule of Persia. The city has survived another turning point in history, but no city remains at the center of the world forever. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, Babylon's greatest days begin to slip into the past. Its influence, however, will never truly disappear. For long after its empire has faded, long after its kings are forgotten, the achievements of Babylon will continue shaping civilizations across the world.
Another century passes over the plains of Mesopotamia. The Euphrates continues its slow and faithful journey through Babylon, just as it has for thousands of years. Each spring, its waters nourish the surrounding fields. Each summer, its gentle current carries boats loaded with grain, wool, dates, and pottery. From a distance, the city still appears magnificent. Its walls remain immense, its temples still dominate the skyline. The Ishtar Gate continues to welcome travelers from distant lands. Yet beneath this familiar beauty, quiet changes are taking place. Changes so gradual that most people hardly notice them. History rarely announces the end of an age. Instead, it whispers. Under Persian rule, Babylon remains one of the empire's most important cities. Royal governors continue to administer the region. Merchants still crowd the marketplaces. Priests still perform sacred ceremonies. But the city is no longer the capital of an independent empire. Important decisions are increasingly made elsewhere. The center of political power has shifted. For the first time in generations, Babylon is no longer directing the future of the ancient world. It is becoming part of someone else's story. Still, life goes on. In the bustling markets, traders continue to bargain over spices, fine textiles, copper tools, and precious stones. Along the Euphrates, fishermen cast their nets each morning.
Children attend the tablet houses, patiently learning the complex signs of cuneiform. Families celebrate weddings, mourn loved ones, and gather each evening beneath cool rooftop terraces. The rhythm of daily life remains comforting and familiar. Then, in the late 4th century BCE, another extraordinary figure enters the story. His name is Alexander the Great. Sweeping across Asia with astonishing speed, Alexander defeats the Persian Empire. In 331 BCE, after his victory at the Battle of Gaugamela, Babylon opens its gates to him. Unlike many conquerors, Alexander does not treat the city as an enemy. He admires its history. He walks through its broad avenues. He visits its temples. He is said to have planned ambitious projects to restore parts of Babylon and make it one of the great capitals of his empire. For a brief moment, it seems that Babylon may once again stand at the center of world events. Workers begin clearing canals. Plans are discussed. Hope quietly returns. But history takes another unexpected turn. In 331 BCE, while staying in Babylon, Alexander falls ill. After several days of fever, he dies in the royal palace. He is only 32 years old. His sudden death changes everything. Without a clear successor, his vast empire is divided among competing generals. Years of conflict follow. New capitals begin to rise elsewhere.
Cities such as Alexandria in Egypt attract merchants, scholars, and rulers. Gradually, the importance of Babylon begins to decline. Its great buildings, once maintained by thousands of workers, receive less attention. Mud brick walls require constant repair. Without regular maintenance, wind and rain slowly begin their work. A corner collapses here, a staircase weakens there, a temple roof begins to crumble. Nature patiently reclaims what humanity no longer protects. Generations pass. Some families leave in search of new opportunities. Trade routes slowly change. The once crowded processional way becomes quieter. The magnificent palaces echo with fewer footsteps. The great city that had once ruled an empire slowly transforms into a place remembered more for its past than its present. Yet Babylon never completely disappears. Travelers continue visiting its ancient ruins. They marvel at the massive foundations. They wonder how such enormous walls were ever constructed. Stories grow larger with every generation. Some speak of towers reaching the heavens. Others describe gardens floating above the earth. Some claim the city possessed unimaginable riches. Legend begins to blend with history, and Babylon becomes something more than a city. It becomes a symbol, a reminder that even the greatest achievements of humanity are temporary. As the evening sun sets behind the distant horizon, long shadows stretch across broken walls that were once the pride of an empire. The Euphrates still flows quietly beside them, patient, unchanging, watching as kingdoms rise and kingdoms fall. Only one final chapter remains. Not the story of Babylon's kings, but the story of Babylon's legacy. A legacy that still shapes our world today.
The sun is setting once again over the plains of Mesopotamia. A warm golden light spreads gently across the quiet waters of the Euphrates, just as it did more than 2,500 years ago. The great walls of Babylon no longer stand in their full glory. The brilliant blue of the Ishtar Gate has long since faded from its original place. The mighty ziggurat of Etemenanki survives only in broken foundations. The voices of kings have fallen silent. The armies have disappeared. The palaces have become ruins. And yet, Babylon has never truly vanished. Its empire ended in 539 BCE, but its influence continues to shape the world in ways its people could never have imagined. If we listen carefully, we can still hear echoes of Babylon in our own lives. The careful observations made by Babylonian astronomers helped future civilizations understand the movements of the heavens. Their patient records of the moon and planets became the foundation upon which later astronomers in Greece, the Islamic world, and Europe would continue to build.
Their mathematics, built upon a base 60 number system, survives even today. Every time we divide an hour into 60 minutes, every time we divide a minute into 60 seconds, we are unknowingly using an idea refined in ancient Mesopotamia. The scribes who patiently pressed tiny wedge-shaped marks into soft clay created one of humanity's greatest written archives. Because of them, historians can still read business contracts, school exercises, royal decrees, astronomical observations, and ordinary family records written more than 25 centuries ago. These humble clay tablets have become voices from another age. Babylon also reminds us of the remarkable power of engineering. Its canals transformed dry land into fertile farmland. Its builders raised walls that astonished ancient travelers. Its architects designed gates and temples that became symbols of an entire civilization. Even today, archaeologists continue uncovering new pieces of this extraordinary city, each discovery adding another chapter to its story. Babylon lives on not only through archaeology, but also through literature and faith. Its name appears in ancient texts, religious traditions, classical histories, and countless works of art. Some remember it as a city of astonishing beauty, others as a symbol of human ambition, others still as a warning that no earthly power lasts forever. Each generation sees Babylon through its own eyes. Yet perhaps the greatest lesson Babylon offers is not about conquest or wealth. It is about time. When Nebuchadnezzar looked out from his palace, he likely believed his magnificent city would endure forever.
Its walls seemed unbreakable, its temples eternal, its empire secure. But history reminds us again and again that every civilization changes. Assyria once seemed invincible. Babylon replaced Assyria. Persia replaced Babylon. Later came Alexander. Then new empires rose across the world. Each believed it would last forever. None did. And still, something remarkable survived. Not the crowns, not the armies, not the palaces, but the knowledge, the stories, the ideas, the dreams. These continue traveling across centuries, long after stone has crumbled into dust. Imagine now that you are standing quietly beside the Euphrates at twilight. The busy markets have faded into memory. The sounds of soldiers have disappeared. Only the gentle movement of the river remains. Above you, the same stars that Babylonian astronomers once studied begin to fill the evening sky. Venus shines brightly in the west. The moon slowly climbs above the horizon. A cool breeze carries the scent of reeds growing along the riverbank. For a brief moment, the distance between past and present feels very small. The people of Babylon were not so different from us. They hoped for peaceful homes. They worried about their families. They worked hard each day. They celebrated joyful moments. They mourned loss. They looked toward the future with hope, even though they could not know what history would bring. Their world has passed, yet their humanity remains familiar. As darkness settles gently across ancient Mesopotamia, our journey through the Neo-Babylonian Empire comes to an end. From the courage of Nabopolassar to the brilliance of Nebuchadnezzar, from the shining Ishtar Gate to the mystery of the Hanging Gardens, from the quiet work of scribes to the patient observations of astronomers, from the rise of an empire to its peaceful passing into history, Babylon has shared its story. And perhaps, as you drift toward a peaceful sleep, the ancient city continues to glow somewhere in your imagination. Its blue gates still shining beneath the evening sky, its temples reaching toward the stars, its people quietly walking the streets of a world long gone, yet never truly forgotten. Thank you for joining this journey through one of history's most remarkable civilizations. Sleep well, and until our next journey into the past, good night.